Welcome back to the Young Turks. Now, earlier in the show, we started telling you about how the right wing in this country has gotten more and more extreme, more and more radical. They just did this conference, How to Take Back America, where they accused Obama of just about everything under the sun. And it's led to an unfortunate climate in the country. And Nancy Pelosi talked about it recently, where she said that she fears that it's a similar environment that existed in the 1970s in San Francisco, when, of course, then several people, including the mayor and gay rights advocate and city councilman Harvey Milk, was shot, and they were both killed. And so she said she was concerned about that. So we're going to bring on Eric Boehlert from Media Matters, who's also concerned and thinks that there is cause to be concerned about about an article that he wrote about it. Eric, first, welcome back to the Young Turks.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thanks.
All right. Now, talk to me about why you think Nancy Pelosi might be onto something here.
Well, there was a decent article in Politico last week where they talked to FBI and other security experts who talk about, who confirmed the obvious. I mean, you can't have this kind of runaway hate rhetoric and not think any of it's going to stick. I mean, you can't assume everyone who watches Fox News and listens to Speck and Limbaugh all day, 8, 12, 14 hours a week, take this as all sort of rhetoric or metaphors and symbols. I mean, the obvious message that Beck has been sending since January 21st is that someone has to come forward and save this country before Obama ruins it. And he's basically sending out calls to patriots to do something. It's this sort of insurrectionist militia rhetoric that we heard, in the 90s under Clinton. But yeah, I mean, it's like, come on, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, there's obvious consequences when you unleash in the mainstream, when you legitimize these dark, paranoid fantasies about it's not Obama is wrong or he's too liberal or I hate his policies. It's he's destroying the country on purpose. That's why he wanted to run to become president, to destroy America from within. That's a much different, more radical, paranoid message that we've ever really heard in mainstream politics before.
Eric, as you're talking on the website, we have pictures up from some of these conservative rallies.
Yeah.
Calling for the death of Obama, and this time we didn't come with our guns, but we will next time, et cetera, et cetera. You wrote that this reminds you of the time before 1963. What happened? There was the 1970s in San Francisco. Something else happened in '63. Tell us about that and how you see similarities.
Well, it was interesting. I was reading a piece in Vanity Fair. It was actually about from the current issue. It's about the Kennedys, but it was about a different part of the Kennedy life, and a book that was basically commissioned by the Kennedy family to be written about the assassination. But part of that, they were talking about the researcher who William Manchester, who was paid to write the book, and he was talking about all the research he did, and he was talking about the hotbed atmosphere in Dallas in 1963. And I was reading the passage, and I was just sort of stunned because they were calling Kennedy a communist. They were saying he had sold out to Fidel Castro. He had handed over his sovereignty to Castro. And the one part here said, Manchester discovered that in a wealthy Dallas suburb, when told that President Kennedy had been murdered in the city, the students in a fourth grade class burst into applause. That rang a bell with me because a couple of weeks ago we had kids, or at least their parents, were telling me you can't go to school because you might hear the President of the United States unedited. So to me, that description of the sort of visceral anti-Kennedy hatred from 1963 reminded me a lot of today. Back then, it was very much John Birch. It was very localized within Dallas. Now, obviously, Kennedy's assassin was not a right winger, but I think it's impossible to differentiate that sort of hate that was fermented in Dallas,
right,
and the hate that's being fermented nationwide on a much huger scale than the country ever experienced in '63.
Right, and his shooter was not a right-winger, so far as we know.
Right. That's a whole other topic.
Yes, it definitely is. And then, one of the signs that they had and that we just showed on the website was bury Obamacare with Kennedy. So, that connects the two time periods in some macabre way.
That's right, it does. And in fact, Congressman Kennedy over the weekend was talking about this, and there was an article in today's Providence Journal. He goes into great detail about how his family has experienced this kind of hatred before. He's very afraid about the violence. He talked about those placards. He's saying, look, this was not someone in their basement. This was mass-funded, mass-distributed signs that said, bury health care with Kennedy. He said, we've lived through this before. We see the signs. And he was basically saying people are crazy if they don't think something's coming.
Well, I mean, in this case, we literally see the signs coming.
Yeah.
Okay, and
they're not shy. They're not hiding their emotions
No, and and Eric, now we see some deaths as a result of this nonsense talk. You had the cop shot in Pittsburgh because the guy was worried about that they were coming for his guns.
Obama was going to come take his guns.
Right. Same exact thing happened in Florida. That case was not as well publicized, but 2 cops shot, and again, the guy worried about them coming for his guns and Obama coming for his guns. There was the guy planning the bombs up in Maine, and now we have the census worker killed,
and the Holocaust shooter and the museum shooter in Washington.
Right, and so the violence is spreading. And
look what happened last week with this idiotic story about those young second graders who sang the Obama song. Of course, that school got death threats. I mean, it's the sun sets following sunrise. Once this right-wing mob gets whipped into a frenzy, death threats are like automatic. And so, sure enough, the elementary school in New Jersey, after Drudge and Michelle Malkin declared that it was a disgusting, vile sight to see young kids singing a song in praise of Obama during Black History Month, of course the schools started getting death threats, started pouring in. That's the way it works.
Yeah, ironically, Michelle Malkin says that she's got to move her family around the country because she's worried about threats against her. Well, wait till you're a liberal, then you'll see real threats, right? Please, give me a break with that. Anyway, but here we get to the real fundamental question, because I think these facts are well established, Eric, but what do we do about it is not easy.
Right.
In fact, I don't have an answer for it. What's your sense of what can we possibly do, if anything?
Well, I think, we need to be vigilant about it, and frankly, I wish, the mainstream press would take this stuff more seriously. The mainstream press, I think, continues to look away from the really vile, hateful stuff that's going on. Look, if at the end of August, if you looked at those mini-mobs, early September, I was seeing a trend in terms of the Beltway press sort of quickly putting in a capsule what happened in August. They're talking about passion. They're talking about demonstrations. They were talking about there was pushback during these town hall forums. That is the most blatant kind of whitewashing possible. I mean, people were showing up with loaded pistols, hanging congressmen in effigy, parading around in Hitler signs. This was not, these were not just sort of run-of-the-mill demonstrations. The press refuses to really put a label on it, and they need to because it has become so radical. From a media perspective, I just don't think the press is willing to sort of call it as it is, which is sort of this hate mob mentality. And it's a mob mentality that's increasingly setting its sights on private citizens like these little school kids and things like that, which is just incredibly dangerous. I mean, they just lack all common sense and all common decency. So the irony is, the New York Times public editor this weekend wrote a column saying the New York Times is, it's too slow to pick up on conservative news stories like Acorn and stuff. And, the Daily Howler wrote a great blog post today saying, the New York Times does have a problem with covering the conservative movement. It's completely blind to its hatred and won't call out all the garbage that they have dumped into the mainstream going back to the Clinton years. So the New York Times has a problem covering conservatives, it's completely blind to what's really going on.
Right, because
in terms of the danger.
And they're afraid. They're afraid.
Oh, absolutely.
They're afraid that if they call it as it is, that they're going to be labeled liberal, and that's the biggest fear they have. Not of violence, not of anything else, but God forbid a conservative should call you a liberal. And so the New York Times and other publications are in a panic over it.
Right. I mean, if you had told me 6 or 9 months ago that the right wing, the rhetoric, the quote unquote discussion would be about Obama's a racist, fascist Nazi, I would have said, on what dark corner of the internet? But this is the mainstream rhetoric. But if you look at the sort of the press coverage, it's just sort of a shrug of the shoulders. Oh, liberals did the same thing when Bush was in power.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
Excuse me?
That's nonsense.
Are you kidding me?
No, but Eric, I mean that's an excellent example of the differences here. And by the way, we're talking to Eric Boehlert from Media Matters. It's when Bush was in charge, if anyone called Bush a Nazi, it
was a week-long story,
and it would be instantly, delegitimized, discredited. And they would become radioactive. Nobody would want to touch them. Whereas right now they're doing that How to Take Back America conference in St. Louis for the conservatives, and they've got a panel on how Obama's a Marxist and how he's a communist,
That's right.
and I'm sorry, and a fascist, okay, and i.e. a Nazi. And you got Representative Trent Franks, Representative Michelle Bachmann, you got former Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, and I could go on and on. And they are not delegitimized. They are not discredited. They're treated as perfectly legitimate. My God, imagine, Eric, if people started showing up with guns to Bush rallies.
Or to a Move On, or to Netroots Nation or something.
Yeah,
it would have been the end of the world.
Right, and how...
And everyone there would have been like, what the hell? Get out of here.
You lunatic, right.
We don't want any of that nonsense here.
Exactly, but
they
you're right.
Be escorted to the panel for a discussion.
You're right to point out the media disparity here, because it makes a difference if it's seen as people who are on the lunatic fringe or if it's a legitimate position to have.
Right.
And the media would have called it exactly that if it was anyone on the left and further, right? But when it's the guys on the right, they're just absolutely afraid, ironically here, let me use this phrase, to pull the trigger and say, hey, look, you know what? This is dangerous, it's wrong-headed, and it's radical.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there is no such thing as radical on the right end of the spectrum in terms of the Beltway press. Radical only really applies to the liberal side. But again, we've got rhetoric right now that's just completely off the charts. But no, there's no such thing as a radical. There's no such thing as a radical right, really, in terms of the New York Times and the Washington Post.
And how they cover. That's right. All right. Eric Boehlert is from Media Matters. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.